start the program on the Chicano Moratorium. So if you can please silence all your phones and be respectful, we would really appreciate it.
Good morning, I'm Marcio Rodriguez.
Good morning, I'm Valeria Salazar, and today we're going to be presenting the Chicano Moratorium Assembly. With this, I hope to inspire you to find that pride and identity and express it. I hope to motivate you to continue the legacy. Thank you.
So we're about to call up our esteemed Garfield High School principal, Mr. Favela. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you, and good morning to our invited guests. Welcome to Garfield High School. I'm the very proud principal here, Andres Favela. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be the principal of such a historic, traditional high school, best in East LA. Students, you guys have to realize the school that you attend, the history behind that school, the traditions behind that school, those that came before you, is major. And it's events like today that we get to recognize and celebrate and acknowledge some of the things that the students that came before you participated in. Not just the students, but also the community. Garfield has always been the hub, the center for movements. And you're going to learn about one of those very important movements today. And that's what it's all about here. Being in high school, being in school, learning. And I really do have to, I would be remiss if I didn't thank and acknowledge our history department, in particular Mr. Garcia, for organizing this wonderful event. Let's hear it for our history department.
Thank you, Mr. Favela. With that, we're going to welcome our Garfield Mariachi.
Cuando quieras que esté yo contigo, no hallarás un recuerdo de mí, ni tendrás más amores conmigo. Yo te juro que no volveré, aunque me haga pedazos la vida. Si una vez con locura te amé, ya de mi alma estarás despedida. Llorando de rabia, no volveré, no pararé hasta ver que mi llanto ha formado un arroyo de olvido anegado, donde yo tu recuerdo ahogaré. Podría volver, si te juré nunca volver, debes creerme. Te cumpliré y mi promesa es no volver. Y aunque me digas que no puedes olvidarme, en este mundo nadie es indispensable. Tú puedes ser feliz sin mí y yo sin Y como todo lo que hay vida en sí se muere, y yo no quiero ser la muerte para ti. Aplausos for Garfield Mariachi. Podrías pensar que me dolió que me dejaras, y es muy cierto. Y como tú comprenderás, todo este tiempo sufrí bastante que juré nunca volver. Y aunque me digas que sin mí tu vida es triste, eso debiste haber pensado antes de irte. Te juro que por ti ya nada puedo hacer. Y aunque me digas que me quieres y me quieres, y aunque me pidas que regrese y que regrese, juré que nunca volveré y no volveré.
Este amor apasionado, está todo alborotado por volver. Voy camino a la locura, y aunque todo me tortura, sé querer. Nos dejamos hace tiempo, pero me llegó el momento de perder. Tenías mucha razón, le hago caso al corazón y me muero por volver. Todos. Y volver, volver. Volver a tus brazos otra vez. Llegaré hasta donde estés. Yo sé perder, quiero volver, volver.
To our Garfield Mariachi. That was a wonderful performance. Now, to introduce a short video on the history of the Chicano Moratorium and its purpose.
30,000 Chicanos marched through the streets of East LA that day.
Now let's take a moment, and I ask all those who fought in the Vietnam War, who fought in the Civil Rights Movement, or who fought for our communities to rise, for a round of applause of the audience. We would like to recognize
And now, I'd like to introduce you to four very special guest speakers: Rosalío Muñoz, Gloria Arellanes, Gilbert Cano, and Viviana Aparicio. Please welcome them with a round of applause. With that said, I'm going to hand over the mic to Rosalío Muñoz.
Well, you've just seen a lot of what I thought about our movement, the Chicano Moratorium movement. I want to add a few things because we usually talk about the Chicano Moratorium of August 29, 1970, and it was one of the most memorable occasions in our history, one of the happiest, and then one of the saddest times in our history, and the combination of those two led to some real strong dedication that we've kept in our movimiento from then on. But I want to talk a little bit about the other actions that we did and some key things about the moratorium. It shows, on one hand, que sí se puede, but it also shows that you don't just do it because you want to do it. There are ways to do it, and I would say it's the así se puede. Some basic approaches. So I want to start with some of the things. We had a student movement, we had youth movements in the barrios and on the campuses, the Brown Berets, the Mechas, all kinds of different groups were coming up at that time. In the high schools, for the walkouts, et cetera, I think you covered that last year, especially if there'll be something tomorrow for some of you. I was active at UCLA, first in the student movement, and then the Chicano movement came onto the campus, and I was happy to join. Actually, I grew up first, in my first year in Flagstaff, Arizona. We came here for my dad to go to grad school. After he came back from World War II, we moved into Rowan and 5th Street, on 5th Street, just by Rowan. And then after a year, when I was 2, we moved to the Maravilla projects. It was when they were like old barracks, but they were much better than the other housing because they hadn't built anything in the 30s, the Depression, or during the war. So we lived in the Maravilla projects. And then when I was 4 and a half, my dad had moved up and got his second master's, and we got a job with the school district, and we were able to buy a house in Lincoln Heights where there were Chicanos, there were Italians, there were some Asians, and some what we would call Okies back then. My best friends were from Missouri, but Oklahoma and some of those areas. And it was a very wonderful time. My mom and dad had gone to college, had worked their way through in the 30s, which was rare. My dad went on to be in education for his career. My mom became a mom as we got more and more kids, at the end 5, but she began in the PTA. So at Reagan School, and now it's named after a Japanese-American person, but Reagan Avenue, she was the head of the PTA. Avenue 21, they got knocked down by the Golden State Freeway, was also that, and also at Nightingale Junior High. So I had experience, my brothers and sisters, I had a lot of cousins that went to college, so I was able to be active there. And so I was in the student movement and then joined the Chicano movement. And then there was an opportunity to run for president. I was elected. And I ran because I got support, because we thought it would be important for Chicanos. So the big problem then was the draft. If you were going to college, you didn't have to go to the war. And so when we started getting more, especially after the walkouts, Chicanos on the campuses, they saw back home their brothers, their cousins, their neighbors, their boyfriends, they were getting sucked up by the draft or volunteers so they wouldn't get in the draft. And so on the campus, though, there were all these white young guys that they didn't have that pressure. And so we saw the importance of the injustice of the draft and many other things that forced us into the war. I decided I was going to oppose the war, challenge it in the court if I got drafted. And so that was a beginning. When I was student president, I signed with 200 others to be against the war. So on September 16th, Mexican Independence Day, I was supposed to report. Instead, we took 100 tickets and we said we're going to start a movement against the war to strengthen what we already had. against the war in our community. And so that was taking responsibility. People in Mecha, people in the peace movement, and others said, we're going to build something against the Vietnam War in the Chicano community nationwide. And a year after that, it happened. So that's taking responsibility, and especially those directly affected. In my case, I was affected by the draft. A month, 2 months, 3 months later, we had the first Chicano moratoriums. There were dozens and dozens of moratoriums in the white community, especially all over the country. But we didn't get recognition that we were part of it. So we had to have our own. So fortunately, the Brown Berets took leadership in LA and organized the first Chicano Moratorium, December 20th, in 1969. And the community joined in. Gloria here did the leaflet for it. I think helped get the permits. So that was focusing on going to the barrio, showing them that we were dying in Vietnam, and then pointing towards doing bigger things. 2 months later, we had a bigger moratorium, February 28th, in pouring rain. There were some problems. The women in the berets decided they had another way they wanted to march, so they marched in black. They had crosses that had the names of Chicanos that were dead. And it was a sign that the women were becoming a major part of the peace movement. Actually, it was women, the mothers and sisters. There was one lady with a sign marching in the rain, said, "Quiero hijos, no héroes." And so that was a major thing. So in getting things started, that's what happened. So in the moratorium, we had a huge turnout in depth and in breadth that we could go more into. But then they attacked us, and the national government we have from the FBI started pinpointing about attacking our movement. We would have demonstrations. They would find ways of forcing confrontations and blame it on us. And so it was very difficult. We ended up in the end of 1971, we marched from Calexico to Sacramento. We were arguing over having a separate Chicano party or not. And then we decided, well, we have to go into new methods of moving. But we set a policy of being for peace, of taking on national issues, and of having independent positions that would benefit the whole society. Because we began to say not only our deaths, but also the money that's been spent should be to solve the unemployment, to solve smog and pollution, to solve healthcare problems, and all of those. And that's what we need today. Blessed are the peacemakers, because there's more wars today, there's more money being spent, and we need you to also be involved. And we have to learn our history, and you're going to be learning. We're doing all the photos that we have of the demonstrations. I have to end my speech, but you'll be hearing at it from the teacher Garcia, Juan, and others, that how you can sign up and how collect the history and make that history both in the movement, but also in digitizing things in the computer.
Let's give another round of applause for Reveal. We were told that you played a huge role in preserving all the documents and illustrations from the movement, so thank you for preserving our history. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first student performance, Angelica Garcia.
Good morning, my name is Angelica Garcia. The following piece that I'm going to be telling you guys applies to everybody. It applies to you freshmen who, believe it or not, your first year is already up, and before you know it, you're going to be seniors. It applies to you sophomores because junior year is literally 7 days away, and believe me, junior year is something. Juniors, senior year is right around the corner, and we have to keep going strong all the way. And also to you seniors, because you did it, you made it, and you're gonna keep this as a wake-up call. I want all of you guys to keep this as a wake-up call to hold on to the best thing that we've got, which is our education. My piece is called ¿Por qué? ¿Qué quieres hacer cuando crezcas? What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher. How are you going to get there? College. Well, you aren't doing anything about it. It's 7:50 in the morning and you're walking into an overcrowded school. The bell rings, you're in class. Wait, back up. That's if you're even in class. What time is it? 8 o'clock, 8:20, 8:40. Damn, that's late and you're barely walking into class at 8:40. ¿Por qué? Only 6% of Chicanos, you heard me, only 6% of Chicanos are getting a bachelor's degree, yet you walk into class like nothing is happening at 8:40. Like your cultura isn't being pushed down because we Chicanos are known as stupid people who can't get a damn education. Because we are known to only work in places like McDonald's and King Taco. Wake up! You're in math class, yet you always fall asleep. You receive your grade and you are failing. What'd you get? I got a fail. What about you? I got a D. And you? I got a fail. Yet you don't care. Why do you keep relying on the system? I guess it's summer school, spring break, and Saturday school, winter intervention for you. Stop relying on the system that is failing you. Just like how Malcolm London said, school is a training ground. It is a place where they separate the smart from the dumb, the regular from the honors, where they recycle the trash from the system, which is who? It's you, it's me, it's the children of undocumented immigrants, that's who. Stop letting your roots get insulted like that. Don't you realize? Don't you realize that you're getting your roots insulted? Don't you realize that you're only getting the minimum teaching, the minimum resources, the minimum counseling? Don't you realize that there are Chicanos in college who have their classmates and professors telling them that they don't deserve to be in a 4-year college? ¿Por qué? Why can't you have the ganas to make your parents' hard work of crossing the border pay off? Mama and Papa crossed the border so you can cross the stage. It doesn't matter. 75% of Latino parents encourage their children to go to college, to get a college education. Stop adding yourself to that 40% of Chicano students who don't want to go to college, to that 20% of Chicano students who don't have the grades to get accepted into a college. It doesn't matter. Let it be a trade school, community college, Cal State, UC, East Coast, West Coast, up north, down south, across the world. Don't let the money stop you. Don't let your English skills stop you. Work hard, ganas. Mamá, papá told you, mijo, quiero que tengas un futuro. I want you to be happy. Yet here you are just warming up your seat. Thank you.
I will introduce Gloria Arellanes.
Thank you. Give yourselves a hand here. You deserve it, okay? You are beautiful people. You will go wherever you want to go, and don't let anybody tell you you can't, because you can, okay? Quick word, my mother graduated from this high school in the 40s, 1940s. So I descend from a bulldog. I am a Tangba elder, and the Tangba people are the indigenous tribe of this land, but I am also a Chicana. Okay, and I claim both histories because I try to walk away from my Chicana history. This man brought me back. It took 40 years for me to come back. I know 40 years sounds like, wow, that's a lifetime. You know, geez, I weren't even thought of at that time. But here I am, still doing what I do. I'm still active in the community. Go back and forth between Chicano issues and Native issues. So I'm very proud of what I do, and very concerned about the climate. But basically, with the moratorium, what we did back in the 60s and early 70s was very different, very radical. And we weren't accepted by some parts of the community because maybe some of us were militant and were just saying, they didn't like the word Chicano. And that's a word that seems to stick to this day, even though we're very diverse now in terms of where people come from. More people come from the South, from different countries. I ask young people, how do you identify yourself? And they can't give me, an idea. But I refer to them as indigenous. We're all indigenous, and that means we're people of the land. So, but the moratorium was a time, it was very exciting when we got involved with the moratorium, and we contacted thousands of people. I did housing. And what I did basically was try to get people here in the Los Angeles area to house people that were coming from other parts of the country. And thousands of people traveled from all over to come over here. And what I remember the most vividly about that day was the festive feeling that it created. We had a purpose. We believed that the war should not take place, that our people were dying at a higher rate. And I was told because they have warrior history or genetics, that they weren't afraid to fight. And that's always been like a history in our communities. We've always fought. We've always fought. We're always trying to get what we feel we deserve because we weren't getting what everybody else was entitled to. We didn't have entitlement. Our people suffered just by the color of our skin sometimes, just by our looks. People would look at us and judge us. That is changing, but it still exists, and it's kind of coming back because of the politics of this country. Not a good place to be, really, but we're still resistant, okay? We're resilient, and we will continue to stand up and fight for what we believe in, because we're proud people, very proud people. The Chicano Moratorium brought thousands of people here, and it ended so tragically. I was on a bus, I was thrown on a bus because I got tear gassed, and somebody pulled me off the stage. I couldn't see, I couldn't barely breathe, I was in pain, and somebody pulled me off that stage and put me in a school bus, and then put a wet t-shirt on my face, and I could function a little bit more, but that's one of my vivid memories. And I never knew until maybe a couple of years ago that, I never knew where that tear gas came from, but it was helicopters that were above us. They were dropping like bombs. Okay, so a lot of people. The other vivid memory I have is in the pictures afterwards and some of the videos, was seeing the park just littered with paper, and a wheelchair was tipped over on the floor. Somebody was sitting in that wheelchair. What happened to them, I don't know. And then going to a funeral for the one person, one of the Brown Berets from Almani, Lynn Ward, was killed at the moratorium. And the thought of death, even though I had been a militant and believed in guns, actual death just devastated me. And I went away. But I went to the funeral, and the family was at graveside, and I was kind of late, and there were detectives in the bushes taking pictures of the family. And that kind of sealed it for me, and I said, I'm done, I can't do this. And I left, and I went away for 40 years, and Rosalio has been doing commemoratives of the moratorium, and I said, no, I'm a different person now, I have 2 sons, was not interested in coming back. I went on to tribal issues and, got involved with my tribe. But I did come back, and so I'm here. So when he does come, thank you. As Rosalio said, issues about women and self-determination for women began in the early 70s. And, we've come a long way as women. And, there's an issue right now with murdered and missing Indigenous women, with thousands of women between Canada and here. And if you remember, you may have heard about the women of Juarez, where all these women were being killed or disappearing. And the law enforcement wasn't doing anything about it. And it took the mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and children to go dig in the desert and find thousands of women's bodies. So we're involved in that kind of thing right now. So women, please be careful. Men also. Men are also showing up missing, but the higher rates are with the women. So be careful what you do, be careful where you go, be careful who you don't know and who's watching you maybe. Okay, and I want to see you go on. I was a single mom. I raised 2 children, 2 sons. One is a PhD in physical chemistry. He graduated from UCLA. Yay. So he did it on scholarships and working, and it took him a little bit longer, but he did it on his own. I could not afford to pay for his education, but I supported him. I took care of him. As long as he stayed in my house, I was going to feed him, make sure he was okay, make sure he had gas. God helped him get a car, and he made it, and he's doing extremely well. So I want to see all of you do that. If that's your calling, go. Go. Don't think you can't do it. You can do it. And there are mentors and counselors. My son was a mentor, and they told him, we want you to counsel and assist students at UCLA who are remedial students. He came and he said, Mom, they're not remedial. They just come from bad schools in the ghettos and the barrios. Okay, so don't let anybody say you can't do it. And you will do it, and you can do it, and there's people to help you do that. So I'm going to say my speech. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
We welcome our second student performance, Melissa Garcia.
Good morning, my name is Melissa Garcia, and the title of my piece today is Por la Raza. I want to extend a branch of appreciation to all, because this country called the United States of America is known and praised for its abundance in success, opportunity, and diversity, or so the patriotic motto is supposed to go. I was in East LA the other day, and I saw a Hispanic mother with her teenage son and daughter. She has 3 other adult children, one that is settled, and the other 2 that are preparing to enter a nursing program. Together, they are breaking the common stereotype that Latinos are supposed to take the unwanted labor jobs in the US. The mother is tired, and it's evident. Her husband is a construction worker and has been for 20 years, but he lost his job 2 years ago, and the family continues to struggle economically even after he's found a new one. This couple has been in the US as citizens for more than 30 years, but only 18 in the Patria. Like many others, they have made the treacherous journey to cross the border in hopes of giving their children a much better life outcome than they had in their home country. This is a case for countless families living in East LA and across the US, a situation they have become far too familiar with. In this case, I am the teenage daughter, and this is my family story. This is my Mexican culture and roots that I live with and represent with proudly every single day. We were united in our East LA walkouts and protests of '68 and Chicano Moratorium of '70. We were strong when police brutality and wrongful stereotypes were inflicted on us, when drafting to the Vietnam War was a constant discriminatory act set against us. Yet we are still strong today. We were contributive members of society when we were labeled as illegal criminal aliens, yet we are still contributive members of society today. However, children are still dying at the hands of immigration customs enforcement. My people are starved, abused, tear-gassed, and tortured at the border. However, I have not lost hope in the integrity of this country, because my people now, as they have always done, continuarán la lucha. No somos cualquier mano de obra para estar a su servicio. Sino personas que trabajan duro para lograr lo que necesitan en esta vida, porque hemos enfrentado bastantes injusticias en nuestra historia. Ya basta. Somos chicanos, pero con orgullo y pasión para la raza.
Thank you, Melissa, for that beautiful narrative. With that, I'm going to welcome our third guest speaker, Gilbert Cano.
Good morning. All right, they still have there in the school. I was born in East LA, in a little house with a partera, and I grew up in East LA. I went to, naturally, would be what, an Irish parish, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. So anyway, after Our Lady of Guadalupe, I went to Belvedere High School, then I came here. And I rode the real turn bus, the old blue one. And I dropped out of Garfield, ended up going in the service, and then coming back, and they told me when I went to get help at the unemployment office that us Mexicans are really good with our hands. So they referred me to LA Trade Tech College, where I became a machinist. Thank you, Vanna White. Anyway, I ended up working in that, and then I went into I quit that, I went into a federal program called the Adult Neighborhood Education Project, and I met Rosalio. And after listening to that, for me, the awakening came when I heard the stories of the people in Vietnam, the veterans going to Vietnam, and I saw some of them, especially one right here on Whittier Boulevard, who had a bumper sticker that said, "Support our troops," and he was there with his mother, I could tell, and he had one leg missing. And you could see that he was unemployed, and I started looking at that, and I said, you know what? They've used me all my life to engañarme, to fool me. So then I became involved with the Moratorium Committee, and this would lead us to some of the tactics. One of the things that the Moratorium Committee was doing at that time was they would have a gathering in a park, they would leaflet, they would give beans, tortillas, and to the people there, and you know, our people love free food. And so they would end up listening to that, and I was surprised because even my mother, you know, she'd be at the kitchen table doing her part, mixing, doing the beans and stuff. Esos greñudos, ¿con qué andas? You know, ¿qué andan haciendo? And yet she's cooking for them. And that was one of the basic, I thought the very basic organizing things. Got down to the family, especially family like ours, where I had uncles that served in the Second World War, a brother that served in Korea, another uncle that was a paratrooper in the South Pacific. And so there was a very patriotic theme throughout the family, and all of a sudden here we are going against what the whole country said we should be going for, and listening to the dissident side. That I thought, and to this day, it impressed me the most, to see that woman at the stove, stirring up the beans and saying, ¿qué andas haciendo con esos greñudos que no los aguanto y que blah, 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 y blah, blah, blah. And yet she's cooking for them. That, to me, signified a lot. Now, one of the things that I see that has come out of the Moratorium Committee is there was a lot of awareness. There was a lot of education, like for example, at the Moratorium, August the 29th, we had some people there representing Casa or Aslan in London, England. There was groups of Chicanos, thank you, Anna. There was groups of Chicanos representing Alaska. I mean, we're like cucarachas, we're everywhere. And that was something that was really good. But today, I was talking to some of your students here and listening to what they're going to be doing in the future, listening to the majors. It was, well, one girl, psychology, there was another guy, psychology, but I suspect He wants to study psychology so he can figure out what the girls are thinking. And I told him I would be seeing him on a program of cheaters. But no, it's really good. Coming down here, my wife and I was talking to some students at one of the rest areas where they have the truck stops. And you know, they were going to be nurses, and one Chicana, she's been admitted to study at Davis. She's going to be a math major. And then I look at you guys, and I was sitting there, what, in 1955, 54? What a difference. Number one, I can see you're awake. Number two, you're thinking. Thank you, Anna. And that brings me to what is a Chicano? We had a very limited opinion of what a Chicano was when we were organizing. I look now and I say, my God, it's a tidal wave of people who are going to push us into the future and be able to push back against people who say that we're rapists, that our women are sluts, and that we're too ignorant to do anything. And that's you guys.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really, really, really inspirational. And now I would like to introduce our next student performance, Sarah Marin.
Buenos dias, everyone. My name is Sarah Marin, and I'm presenting Never Ends. This will be his third attempt into entering a los Estados Unidos. La oscuridad would be his savior. El silencio would be his deliverer. Completely insensitive to the darkness of the night, he scrambled across the desert, clenching onto his pregnant wife's hand. They were in pursuit of el sueño americano, the American dream. He kindled his romanticized illusion of plentiful opportunities. His intangible grasp for silence in the ethereal darkness would later haunt him. That very silence and inability to see would contribute to a permanent wrestle to merely survive. His family would be enslaved to prejudice against them. His children would be compelled to suppress their culture. They would be obligated to walk in the shadows of injustice. Ironically so, they would be taught to exercise their freedoms, including their freedom of speech. Yet their compliance would be esteemed, just as ours is. We speak, they reprimand us. We address issues concerning the restrooms, closed restrooms, jam stall doors, lack of soap and toilet paper. We plead for smaller class sizes, more AP courses, and we request Chicano studies, an attempt to grab a hold of our neglected history. We push for murals to express ourselves and our culture. We question why the 400s hasn't been repaired, why our books are so old, and why we aren't given lockers. But we are simply told that now is not the time. We are too young to incite change. How dare we highlight what some are afraid to say? How dare we stand up to the corruption which seeps our school? We resort to silencing ourselves. We back off. We step away. But how dare we? Years ago, my family illegally immigrated to America. They all struggled through poverty and racism. Why, I question, would you waste our parents' endeavor, our parents' heartbreak, to allow their actions to fall in vain? We are told that because we are minorities, we are incapable of achieving. They attack us. They offend our culture. Their words are intended to damage us. Yet we should embrace them. Utilize them as a motivation to prove them wrong. My race will not hinder my achievements. Sí, soy mexicana. ¿Y qué pedo?
Viviana Aparicio.
Hi. Like you, I am an artistic person. You are all artists. I'm sure you scribble in your books, and I'm sure it's very interesting. I have a political consciousness. Since I was little, I've been aware of cruelty in my neighborhood and in the world. And my way to express my feelings and my anger has always been through art. I had no books in my house. My mom was Isabel Aparicio, my dad's Elias. We lived on top of the hill on City Terrace there on Hazard by Cesar Chavez. But there was a encyclopedia salesman would go to door, and my dad bought a set of encyclopedias. That was the only books we had. And he allowed me to draw and color in them in my library. And my library was under the house, under the stairs, and on cardboard, and because I like to be by myself. And so I just wanted to share with you the beginning of my art. And my mother would be playful with us, even though, and my dad would always encourage us to be proud of being Mexican, being proud of your indigenous, your Indian, and be proud of your Spanish. And be proud of the working man, the man that works with his hands. And my mother did not philosophize too much. She was a playful person who told us stories. She was a very good Mexican storyteller, and that influenced me. And she taught me how to sew and to cook. To this day, that art in me is influenced by making things with my mother, from sewing to making piñatas. And I have art here, and these tell the story of how our young men are slaughtered. And that is how I express my sentiment, you know, about especially the mother. Can you imagine a mother that loses her child? Or the mother whose baby is ripped out of her arms at the border? These make me very indignant still today. But as a child, I noticed these things, and my dad was sort of a sad kind of a man, and we never used the word depression, being depressed, but that was the time of the Zoot Suit riots and the KKK in Los Angeles. The mayor in 1929 was a KKK. I just had a conversation with Ray Andrade from Justicia here in a Vietnam vet, and he told us a family story of how really the police at that time in 30s and 40s were members of the KKK. They were very ruthless with the community. My dad would talk about this. My dad was a dark man, African-looking man, my dad, and he was roughed up a lot, but he never really talked about his bitterness to us kids, but he would talk to my mother at night, and I would listen, and I could feel it in the house. So I'm just going to say that throughout my life, I've always been conscious of the family, the mother and the child, and the importance of that bond and the love and the culture of storytelling. And so I did immediately, as my first two children, I did storytelling and theater with the kids, and I did it with the community and with mothers of prison inmates in Pasadena. There was a group that worked with women whose husbands were in prison and in jail, and we did storytelling and with puppets, and then with Teatro de los Niños, and at that time that was like the late 60s by then, and the kids were very concerned about the migra, and the migra was going into the houses and into the schools, and so, but we worked together in writing plays. One of our best plays was Beauty and La Migra. And the migra was this horrible looking cop-like guy, you know. Puppet. With puppetry you can say a lot and get away with a lot. And then I continued in theater, and I would always take classes. I went to university and got several degrees, but when I went to PCC, I met people that were involved in Chicano cultural development. There's a group called MACA, Mexican American Center of Creative Arts, with his name was Ramirez, yeah. And also Justicia, Ray Andrade, who were working with the motion picture television industry and very concerned about the stereotyping of Mexicans in the industry, one in particular the frito bandido, and also Westerns, the spaghetti Westerns, who showed the slaughter of Mexicans. Mexicans were always slaughtered, and they were always scruffy. They never won the fights. And the image persists today of the Mexican leaning against the cactus, sleeping, but we know Mexicans work long hours. We're the hardest workers. So I'd like to again mention Ray Andrade over there for really beginning Justicia. It's very important, and we worked with the motion picture and film industry. We even met with the Screen Actors Guild, and he was very organized, and we focused in on the image, the stereotyping. The image, that was the important thing, and hiring more Latinos. I'm going to respond to a couple of questions that students asked, and one was, well, why? Why do we protest? Why did we protest at that time? Well, think about it. Nobody pays attention unless you make noise. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You've got to make a commotion. But in those times, not only did we make noise, but we were very creative and we were very organized and we had meetings and we used the culture. At that moratorium, I have such memories. It was like Beauty and the Beast. It was beautiful because the community was really mostly youth. We're happy and marching and dedicated, and even there was a young couple that just left the church and they joined in our march. And so it was very beautiful, but the horror of it was the way the cops roughed up people. I was beat up just like many other people, but these two officers, it's gonna be vulgar, but they poked me with their sticks, okay? And it was not only physically dehumanizing, but emotionally dehumanizing. So there were a lot of cruel things that they did. I am gonna say one thing about that Rosalio Munoz has said about war. It is not unpatriotic to oppose war. I'm against terrorism, but what about police terrorism and poverty? And then Jorge Gonzalez, a marvelous, he's a great poet. You've got to read Yo Soy Joaquin. He said, I ain't got no quarrel with the Viet Cong. The war is not in Vietnam. It's not in Korea. It's not in Cambodia. It's right here in the barrios, right here in our community, you know? And so, like today I still fight for our rights. I do have PTS, post-traumatic stress, but I know when it comes over me, and I still try to resist my fear of crowds. And I also will admit that I would say I almost hate. When I see people like men in uniforms, it really puts me into like a PTS thing because of the cops. And so those are things that have affected me today. But I would like to say that I continue despite that, and I'm going to share with you a poem that I wrote, and this is my way of expressing my indignation about the mothers. How dare them, that these strangers take an infant or a child from a mother's arms. Now, be aware that when the mother and the baby are very tied to close, when a baby is in a different room, the infant, the mother can feel the baby. The mother can feel the baby's hunger. The mother's milk even comes in if the baby is in another room or even in another, down the block. That's how close they are. I'm going to say an excerpt of this poem I wrote, Forgive Me. Forgive me. I held you tight, but I had to release you or they would break your little legs. To quiet me, an agent slapped and bloodied my mouth. Another butted his rifle to my back. My body aches for you. I know you cry for me, and I need you to comfort and lighten the burden of my milk and swollen breasts. I suffer the memory of you sleeping in my arms and the memory of the sweet smell of the milk you spit up, and most of all, I miss your tiny soft brown hands. I am a nest without a bird. I need you. I need you safe in my womb. No safety back in our village. No safety there or here. The chamber of my heart no longer cradles you. Now I am empty. Empty. An empty nest. No reason to gather twigs, thread, and cotton. My little bird, fly back to me. Forgive me. And see, this mother feels badly. It's not her fault the baby was torn from her. No, but you always feel guilty like it's your fault. And the last thing I want to do is honor Rosemary Rodriguez from Teatro Urbano. Her husband is Rene Rodriguez from Garfield. Garfield gave birth to many Teatro people. Hank Fernandez. Evelina Fernandez, John Rouse, and others. So this place has a lot of culture and a lot of history. And I expect from you a renacimiento, a rebirth of the movement. And you will have a lot of culture, and you have to have culture for your political efforts, because we are cultured people, and you cannot leave the music out, or the poetry, our beautiful language, because that's what moves. And the last thing I'm going to say is something that it's good to use, or sayings from famous people to help you get through life. Remember when Pope Francis was in Mexico, something he said moved me very much, and he said, to make life worthwhile, you must practice your culture. You must practice your customs, because that gives you happiness on earth and helps you with your families. It's your roots, like a plant. You gotta, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Fiona, for sharing your experiences and your inspiration. And lastly, we're going to introduce our last student performance, Richard Bustamante.
My name is Richard Bustamante, and today I'm going to be presenting to you guys a poem I wrote called Who We Are Today. It goes, we are who we are today, thanks to those from back in the day. We are as proud as we are today, thanks to those from back in the day. We are all much freer in every single way, thank you to those from back in the day. Our many liberties are here to stay, thank you to those from back in the day. I thank those who walked out in '68 and freed us from the wretched claws of hate. I thank those who took brutal beatings from cops and they would refuse to stop. And I thank those resilient enough to keep going on, because if it weren't for them, we would not be who we are today. Today, we are all a people of pride, and it really shouldn't be a surprise that no matter how bad things may be, a smile on a Latino's face never leaves. Things are much easier now than they were back then, for I really cannot remember when a whole race of people would try to bring me down. And even if today things aren't exactly perfect, the effort you put in was absolutely worth it. Thank you.
All the experiences that you learned from our special guest speakers have motivated you, inspired you to do something. I want to thank all of you for coming out here. I really, really hope that you gained something out of this and that now you're motivated to follow in these people's footsteps. I want to ask you, what will you do for this community? What will you do for the state? What will you do for the country? What will you do for the world? What will you do for La Raza? Let's keep it going. With that said, I would like to make it known that you're very appreciated for everything that you have done for us. We truly thank you for every single thing